My name is Megan Mock. I'll be moderating our last session for the day, which will be covering water loss. And so to conclude today's sessions, we will first have John Sutton join us. As many of you are very familiar, I'm sure, with John Sutton. He is the manager of the Municipal Water Conservation Program at the Texas Water Development Board. He's been with the board for over 27 years now. His duties include coordinating the submittal and review of required water conservation plans, annual water conservation reports, and water loss audits. And he also coordinates the review of applicants for financial assistance with the board, along with assisting in the regional water planning process, and then a number of many other things. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to John. Hopefully he's joined us. I don't see he's on our presenter list quite yet. So I know Stacy's going to reach out to him and make sure to get him back on.
Megan?
Yeah.
This is Jennifer. I see John in the attendees list. Okay, he just got popped out. He should be back in.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. So yeah, if you're ready, John, you can go ahead and share your screen and turn on your mic.
Okay, very good.
Perfect. We can see your screen and we can hear you.
Okay, good to go. Sorry about that.
Everything looks good, John.
Okay, thank you. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the importance of conducting a water loss audit, understanding the data, and then choosing appropriate measures to address that water loss. A water loss audit evaluates the amount of water that you pump, treat, buy, and sell. The benefit of doing an audit is to identify water loss so a utility may take corrective action, which often leads to financial savings. The water loss audit should really be considered a part of a good operation and management program. Ideally, although they're required reports, the water loss audit should have more benefits to the utility than it does to the state. So this year, all retail public water systems need to submit a water loss audit. This is for the calendar year 2020. It's due by May 1st, about a week and a half to go on that. We do recommend that everyone conduct a water loss audit annually. Again, going back to just being part of a good operation and management program. Also, as a note, training is now required for those who are submitting a water loss audit. We have a 1-hour video that meets those requirements. And we also are doing a webinar actually tomorrow morning. And so there's a link there that you can check on that. Training is good for the person who participates in the training. It stays with that person. Once you receive that acknowledgement of training, you should upload it and save it to your computer because you'll need to upload it every time you go to submit a water loss audit. So after you determine how much water has entered your distribution system, then you can determine how water was used. And these 4 categories show the makeup of what is considered authorized use. Basically, these are known uses within your system. Once you have an idea of your authorized use, that balance then is going to be water loss. And that's either going to be apparent loss or real loss. It's also important to note that water loss has an associated cost with it. Bottom line, your customer meters are your cash registers. And with an apparent loss, you're losing revenue because of theft, inadequate billing processes, and meter accuracy. You may want to consider a meter testing and replacement program to get a good idea on the accuracies of your customer meters and also to determine the need for a replacement program. When it comes to real loss, you're losing water that you've treated. Make the best estimate of the leakage. Start tracking when you repair a leak, when you respond to a leak. We have an online, we have a water loss calculator, leak calculator on our website that you find very useful. Calculate what that leakage is costing you as well. And then take a look at possible leak detection approaches. Do you want to do a survey of your distribution system? This could be done in-house. We have leak detection equipment at the Texas Water Development Board we can lend you. You may want to contract with a consultant, a third party or such. Also, performance indicators. Take a look at the technical and financial side of that, and also use these indicators to help develop some history and track your performance from year to year. One of those indicators is Infrastructure Leakage Index, ILI. This is really appropriate for larger systems, those with more than 3,000 connections. And then we have the cost of apparent loss. And again, that's lost revenue. And then also the cost of real loss, the production cost of providing water. Certainly that's going to add up to the cost of total water loss. And these are all important because, again, taking a look at it from the financial impact that water loss is having on your system. We have total water loss per connection per day. And then also we have gallons per capita per day, also for total use within your system, but also a component of that as water loss in gallons per capita per day. Probably the best metric to use is water loss per connection per day. And again, this is going to be appropriate for your system and being able to track your water loss from year to year. You'll also be able to track activities and your mitigation of water loss and see what success you might be having. So when you take a look at the water loss, what are some of the common data issues you may want to take a look at? Well, if you have a negative value for total water loss, that means you lost and sold more than you put into the system. So other words, you made water, and certainly that would be nice, but it really isn't possible. If you have a negative value for real loss, it's possible that you underestimated your customer meter accuracies. You may want to go back and take a look at what you entered there. If you have a negative value for unreported loss, you may have overestimated your leaks and breaks. Again, if you're not tracking that, it may not be best to estimate that. And so again, another area of taking a look at the data that you put in. What does this data also tell you? Again, reviewing that. If your system has a infrastructure leakage index and it's showing to be below 1, that's not very likely. You probably have a data issue somewhere within your audit. You need to go back and take a look at where that may be happening. If you have very high or very low water loss, this also indicates a possible data issue that you may want to take a look at. If you have high or low cost of water loss, double check what information you put in for the retail rate of your water, as well as the production cost of your water. Sometimes the information that you entered in your water use survey, which then auto-populates into the water loss audit, okay, has a problem or an error when you entered that. If your input equals what you build, right, again, that goes right back to you're going to end up losing and selling more in the water loss audit. Again, not possible. You want to be sure that the same units were used. The water loss audit is in gallons. Sometimes if you enter your information into the water use survey in 1,000-gallon units, that may not transfer appropriately. So you may want to double check that as well. Also, in entering some of the base information in your water loss audit, It's real important to make sure that you have a good grip on the number of connections you have, the length of main lines and pressure, because all those elements are used within when, excuse me, estimating your performance indicators, calculating your performance indicators. So part of the water loss audit is also a self-assessment of the data that you added. This could be considered, is considered validation. And basically it's a process of validating each of the lines of data that you enter and the processes that you went through to gather that data. Doing this will also help you identify ways to improve that data and how that data is gathered. So again, this is as important as anything else. Again, useful to you to be able to take a look at what your water loss audit is saying and how you can go ahead and improve that data and start mitigating your water loss. There's also a lot of discussion around the country about third-party validation. These are individuals that are trained to validate or take a look at water loss. They meet with public water systems to go over their water loss audits to be able to determine, again, the steps that they took and what may need to be taken to improve that data. We're currently right now have a contract to have a water loss validation study. We're working with 10 utilities from around the state and looking at their 2020 water loss audits. And again, to get a good idea of the process that utilities go through to collecting that data. And so we can make some recommendations about some of the opportunities and challenges going forward when it comes to water loss and water loss validation. So once you have your audit, go ahead and you need to start determining those steps to take action. Basically start to mitigate your water loss. Starting point, create a trend analysis using your historic water loss audit information. Have a good understanding of how water loss can be improved through data collection. Take a look at the approach and the initial implementation of that data gathering. It may also include system-wide taking a look at performance standards and refinements on how you go about with your audit. Again, use your water loss audit to help identify and direct water loss mitigation activities. Do you need to do a metering, assessment, testing, or replacement? Now and this is important not only for your production and your master meters, you have to have a good idea of the water that's coming into your system, but also then your customer meter accuracy, so you have a good idea of what water is leaving your system. And then you can better focus on that water in between there. It may be a leak detection problem, again, identifying on real loss. Consider pipe replacement and repair program. And also, again, as I mentioned, there may need changes to administrative processes and some policy changes within your utility. If you have questions and need some information, there's my contact. Also, Mark Mathis, he is our new water loss specialist, and we'd be available to answer questions. Thank you.
So thank you, John. And for anybody, if you have any questions for John or for our second speaker, feel free to jot those down in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. And so we'll go ahead and move on to our next presentation, which is by Darrell Westbrook. He'll be covering approaches to comprehensive water loss programs. Darrell serves as the Assistant Director of Water Utilities for the City of Arlington and has been in his position for over 12 years. He currently supervises the Field Services Division, which includes field operations, meter services, and meter reading. And he has also directly overseen the water loss audit process for the past 2 years. Prior to this, he supervised the customer services and water conservation groups. So with that, I'll hand it over to Darrell. Looks like you can see your screen. And if you just want to confirm your audio, it'll be set to go.
Okay, You have me now?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Yeah, as she said, I'm Darrell Westbrook. I've worked in Arlington at the water utilities for almost 19 years, and I've been involved with the water loss for the last 12 years. And really what I'm talking about today, hopefully will give you, John talked a lot about the data and the entry of it and some validation of it. And this is really our experience over the past 12 years. We really started about 12 years ago when I became involved with the audit, and we had really high water loss. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but it was really attention grabbing. And what we did was we got an interdisciplinary team together that included our treatment personnel, field operations, meter services, meter reading, engineering, and our GIS folks to discuss the water loss. And one of the things that we discovered that we were never accounting for is in that particular year, we had a large number of water line renewals and extensions, and actually large sizes too. And to actually put those into use, you have to flush them several times before you actually test them. And so and I'll show you this spreadsheet here, how we calculate that year of every year of what we use to flush those lines. And it's multiple approaches that we take. We do leak detection and repair, and that's obviously to reduce the water loss, provide accurate and universal metering. That includes testing of the meters, replacement of the meters, and control water loss, or at least account for it. If you look at the picture on the left, that is a water leak. It's a small water leak that, if it ever does surface, may take a very long time to surface. So you're losing a lot of water loss. And unfortunately, those type of leaks all too often end up with the picture on the right. And that's what we really try to avoid. But things we've done individually to help better the data that we utilize, as well as put programs into place to help reduce the loss. We determine accuracy of meters by testing new and old. And again, I'll show you a spreadsheet of how we better calculated what we believe the accuracy is of our population meters in the ground. Meter everything. We used to actually have what we called a service available account. Any new residential house that was being built was just straight piped in, and we just billed a fixed amount. Well, we stopped that program several years ago, and if they're getting water, it's got a meter on it. We've really stepped up our meter replacement program, which we're going to AMI, and we've done 75% replacement of our meters, which we have over 110,000 meters in the ground, and we've replaced over 75% of them in the last 8 years, and plan on being done in the next 2 years with all 100%. As you can see from the small leak to the large leak, that should generate an urgency of leak repairs, even if it is a small leak. Fire line detector checks, reviews, and replacement. That wasn't being paid attention to at one point, and we had several customers that would have over 100,000 gallons showing on the detector check. Well, as we all know, there's more water probably going through there than just what's showing up. That's just to detect if there's any loss at all there, or there's any water movement being used on the fire line, which there should be none. And we started reviewing those monthly. And again, making your data better, usage adjustments. Most of us probably have some sort of leak adjustment policy. And at one point, we were actually adjusting, this is years ago, we were actually adjusting the usage on the account. Well, the water went through the meter, and that needs to be accounted for. So when you remove the usage off of the account and adjust the usage, you're actually reducing the amount of water that you've accounted for, and it goes into that lost water category. So it's important to do things that is going to maintain the integrity of the data. Some other things that we want to get to in the future that we're just now starting to work on is large meter calibrations. And large meter calibrations would be any meter that's 3 inches or larger. We would go through every year and do a calibration and pressure control programs for areas of the city that have high pressure. We would actually, as part of our renewals or new line extensions, we would put some sort of pressure reducing valve on those certain areas to reduce the pressure, because the more pressure you have, the more loss you're going to have through any type of leak. So talking a little bit about our proactive leak detection, this is an estimate from 2019. I haven't got the ones from 2020 yet, but as you can see, this is actually devices that we put out in the field, and we usually target areas of older pipe and certain types of pipe like AC pipes or cast iron pipes that are kind of prone to leak. And we put these devices out there to listen for certain frequencies of leak that the water causes going through the pipes. And you see on the top row is actual footage of each month that we surveyed. And then what you see in the middle is the estimated per month water loss from the leaks that we found proactively. These are leaks that haven't surfaced, or they may be going down to some stormwater ditch and just nobody notices it. It's not a reactionary leak detection process. And then using the cost of water, what it costs us to produce the water, which would be the cost of the raw water, the electrical and the chemical, we've calculated it up in annual savings. And this is actually a pretty low amount. It has been higher than that, but at $60,000 a year, you can afford to pay for somebody to do this full time. Meter accuracy, this is something we added this year. I mean, we've always estimated what it is, but this past year for 2020, we actually took old meters out, put them on the bench that you see on the left. We also tested new meters. Even though we have in our specifications that every meter that is purchased must have the high, medium, and low accuracy reading that's tested at the manufacturing facility listed on the meter, we didn't take that for granted, and we actually tested several out of each batch that we received. And I have there the average low flow accuracy, medium, and high flow. And if you looked at the percentage of old and new, there's a big difference, in particular on the average low flow. We took an average of all of those, weighted the percentage of what we tested, and then applied that to our total population of meters in the field of both what we considered new and what we considered old. Calculating all that together, we came up with an average of 94.8% accuracy, which you'll see on our water loss audit this year. This is for our meters in the field. So again, something that we're doing every year to try to better the data and better account for the water. And mentioned earlier about the water line flushings. We get information from our GIS every year of how many new lines we put into use, both renewals and extensions, because we know that it's being flushed, an average of 3 to 4 times before it's put into service. And what you see here is by pipe diameter size, how many linear feet that we actually installed for the year, and then calculate the amount of water that we actually use to flush those, because that's not metered. It's not paid for. But it's cost of doing business. It's what we have to do to put the waters into service, the water line service. So again, we added this probably 12 years ago when we first started looking at this in detail and how we could better account for the data. This next one is kind of a busy spreadsheet, and it's not important that you know everything in there, but it goes back over to 2004 shows what our high service delivery was, what the water we sold, and then different areas that we've accounted for over the year. Like we've got dead end main flushings, total hydrant flushings is what you see in that next third column. These are estimates. But again, it's something to be accounted for. Even the fire department, while we flush the dead end mains, our fire department actually goes and flushes all hydrants every year. So that's accounted for in here. There's also fire department uses. They use it in training. They also use it to fight fires. Again, this is an estimate. And you'll see the next column is when we stopped the construction or service available several years ago and started actually metering all that usage. Water theft, it's a thing. And we've estimated it here. We use work orders on that one because we know who's tampered with the water and maybe took the meter out, or we removed the meter because of, non-payment, and they put a straight pipe in and we catch it. We estimate that. Tank drainings, there's oftentimes elevated storage tanks that need to be drained, or even in-ground storage. We flush sewer lines, and that's what you see on the right is one of our flushing trucks that uses water. And you see the picture on the left, that's when you want the urgency of, the water line repairs along with proactive leak detection, because you don't want that to happen. There's also some utilities have water quality monitoring stations, and there's a constant stream of water through those lines that it tests for various water quality specifics. And again, that's a use. Chlorine monitors at different elevated storage tanks. And the leak adjustment, I talked about that a little earlier, that goes back to when we actually used to estimate when we adjusted the usage off the account. You can see the exact year when we started it. So all this data kind of goes up into making better data so we can better target areas to improve our water loss. So with that being said, that's all I have today. And my contact information is on here. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
Thank you, Darrell. Before we jump into Q&A, I just wanted to remind everybody that we will be sending a SurveyMonkey link with direct you to the evaluation for the symposium. So if you have a chance, we'd appreciate it if you could provide some feedback. And then we will also be posting the slides to all of today's and yesterday's presentations on the Texas Living Waters website. And so let's see here. Don't see any questions posted by anybody, but I do have, I guess, some of my own questions I can pose to John and Darrell. So first off, John, I was curious, in terms of the water loss emissions, what are some of the most common or the biggest kind of mistakes that people make in those submissions, and what the process by which utilities can go back and rectify those mistakes on their submissions? And so if you can provide any context or to that.
A lot of it is information that they entered into the water use survey or did not enter into the water use survey. And so it doesn't show up then on the water loss audit because of the flow of data. And it's very easy to go back and unsubmit your water use survey, put the correct data in, and then submit, and then it will show back up on your water loss audit. One of the things is if you purchase water from another entity, there's a place on the water use survey, what percentage of that water purchased was treated. And unfortunately, it's a little further down on the page and people miss it sometimes. And it's entering in, if you don't enter something in there, that amount of water that you purchased does not show up in the water loss audit. And also making sure on the water use survey, your number of connections that are entered by classification, and as well as the volume of water that you sold to each of those classifications is important as well.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for that feedback. And then for Darrell, I was curious. So obviously Arlington is a pretty good sized utility. Are there any tips or recommendations you might have for smaller utilities that may have, fewer resources or less funding in terms of, addressing and setting up a comprehensive water loss program?
Well, in talking with Stacy, I know that the Lower Colorado River Authority has some resources for leak detection equipment, as well as I know that the Texas Water Development Board does as well.
Yeah.
And I know that's actually part of the water loss audit, or at least the water conservation annual report is asking questions about different areas that you might need some assistance on. So I would certainly look at any of those sources for help.
Okay. Awesome.
If I can note, I think in Darrell's presentation, he showed some really good examples of collecting as much data as you can of what's going on and how the utility themselves are using water within the system. And, accounting for flushing, accounting for leak repair, whatever the case may be. And it really makes a difference. And those are things that you're responding to, and a little extra paperwork, not a whole lot, can really make a big difference when you're looking at the known use of water within your system.
And all that for Arlington is 12 years, kind of a culmination of the work. It's not like we did all that in 1 year and have been doing it ever since. So you got to start somewhere. And those are some ideas that you can certainly utilize.
And that's a good point too. When you're looking at mitigating your loss or improving your data, those changes may not happen from 1 year to the next. But again, those improvements will get to you where you ultimately need to be.
But knowing where the loss is certainly helps you target some of your programs and help prioritize it too. We spend a lot of time in operations on our response to leaks. It makes a difference. We have valve operations programs that we operate the valves regularly to make sure if there's a leak, we go to isolate it. It works. That helps reduce the loss. There's just any number of things you can do within the resources that you have currently that could help.
Yeah, it sounds like the biggest takeaway is data and the importance of it and steering the direction of these programs. So thank you both for both of your presentations, and to everybody else who presented today as well as yesterday. And again, just to remind you, we'll be posting all the slides on the website. And so I don't know if Stacy, Jennifer, if there's anything else you'd like to add, but yeah, we're looking forward to next year and hopefully seeing everybody's pretty faces in person for our next symposium.
Yeah, thank you everybody so much for being here, and we'll send out a follow-up email with the link to the presentations and the recordings once we get those posted up to our website, and also for the evaluation form. And thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.